get stuck this deep, because most of the time you're probably not going to ride out of it. So it doesn't matter jumping up and down on it or bouncing up and down when you're on the bike. It still might not work. Most likely won't when you're this deep. And even the technique of walking along beside the bike, once they get too buried, that won't work either. Once the skid plate hits the ground, the rear wheel's got no weight on it, so it's never going to drive out of the hole. And this hasn't quite got there, but it's pretty close. I don't think you'd ride out of that, that's for sure. So, a couple of things to do first up, and a lot of people don't go there, but the front wheel's pretty important as well. If you can make it easier for the front wheel to get rolling, it makes sense when you stand here and think about it like this, but when you're in a fluster you don't think of doing it, you're just trying to get the bike out of the hole. So it's so easy to do in sand. Just clear as much as you can out from in front of the front wheel, just so even when you get a little bit of movement forward, the bike's going to want to roll a bit easier. So something that simple can make all the difference, because generally you've only got to get it about a bike length or wheel length out.
Yeah, get the wheels out.
Get it up out of the hole. So you only have to roll the bike that far forward and you're out of the worst of it. One technique you can use, and you might be able to get away with it just by doing this, sometimes just by rocking the bike side to side, will free the rear wheel up a little bit from being totally sort of wedged in, and that might be enough to push the bike up and out. You can get in there as well and dig out in front of the rear wheel, but a lot of the time, if it's that soft, you do that and it's just going to roll forward and sink again anyway. That's not really the main part of the problem. Try and free the rear wheel up a bit side to side, clear the front wheel out a little bit, and then this is always easier too if you've got some mates with you, so don't be scared to get a few people on it. At this point you want weight off the bike, so someone on the controls and someone else is simply standing here and lifting up a little bit as you try and creep the bike out, and generally it'll come up and out, but that's one way to try and free it up. And if it gets real bad, which we've had to do once, Vincent sent it in on a couple 800.
With two bikes.
With two bikes. You'll literally have to lay the bike on its side and try and manhandle and drag it so the rear wheel gets out of that hole. But you're never going to lift one of these things out like you might a dirt bike or a trail bike, where you grab the rear wheel, lift it up and put it next to the bog hole. You won't do it. You're just never going to lift one of these by yourself. Even with a few people, it's really, really hard. So, yeah, the next option is on its side. Nothing easy about it, and it's not pretty, but it is just sand, so you just get sandy. You literally lay it over on its side and then try and drag the rear wheel across a little bit so it's out of the hole, fill it with the front, and then pick it back up again, and hopefully you're not as deep, and when you get going that time, hopefully you don't get bogged again. Try and get it right. But this is, personally I think this sort of stuff is what kills people in the sand, even more so than riding it, because not only you get frustrated trying to struggle to ride it, you tip over, you pick it up, you go to get going, you get bogged, and all of a sudden it's like, someone shoot me. Because not only have you struggled for the last however long, you tip it over, you use your hand, you pick it up, you think you're right, you sit on it, you go to get going, and you just sink and you get stuck and you're just like, oh, come on. So anything you can learn along the way, or little tricks to help you get out of those situations a little bit easier, or at least have a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully that can help. So light over and go drag it.
We don't have deflate tyres or anything like that?
We'll talk about that too, but we didn't want to talk about that because look at what you guys have already done without dropping tyre pressures, unless any of you have, which you may have. So you literally got to force it over. 1200s are actually harder in the sand because they've got a cylinder which is like an anchor. It's just that. Just do that. And even if you don't get the front, like as long as you get the rear wheel out of that hole, and then you can just pick it back up again, and you're out of that bog bog hole, and you got a bit more of a chance to get going again. So, but a lot of riders, the first thing they do is try and dig it out with their hand, or keep trying to get the bike out, and you just get worse and worse. And you can see that it's physically a little bit difficult, but not too bad, and you can fix the problem pretty quick. So,
no, I think that's, and I always like think of it too. The more you try and dig and stuff around, you're just getting your gloves full of sand. You just making the day or the ride harder and harder. So try and, like Shane said, just try and get it done once and get it done properly, rather than having 4 or 5 goes at it. It's like when you do bike pickup. Try and get the bike up once rather than having 4 half goes at it, because you just burn energy.
And I think just once it's bogged, it's so hard to get out of that hole using the engine of the bike. And you're never going to push one of these things out with no engine. So, you know, I think people should go to that, lay it over, pull it out of the hole a lot earlier than a lot of people do. They struggle with it for longer.
And also stop trying to ride it out earlier.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like people just make it, you're sitting there and they're just going, ooh.
As soon as you're not moving forward.
It was like 10 seconds earlier, it's still not going to go anywhere. You just made it worse. So try and just admit defeat and fix it.
Kind of like a hill recovery or getting stuck in a hill, same thing. The earlier you throw the white flag up, the easier your life's going to be getting going again.
The less deep you are in.
Yeah. Yep, that's for sure. Back to the tyre pressure thing, that's what we're talking about. So, has anyone dropped their tyre pressures right down? No? So to give you an idea, I'm sure this thing's got 40 in the rear. Whatever the guys at Beamer put in it, but I'm pretty sure it's got, yeah, 40 PSI in the rear. So the reason we didn't bring it up is we wanted to just get everyone riding in the sand. A lot of people initially think you can't ride this stuff unless you drop your tyre pressures down to sort of mid-teens, 14, 15 PSI, especially the rear. But as you guys have proved, you can. We did laps around this track. We've ridden through this a lot. And the reason you don't want to get too hung up on that tyre pressure thing is you might only ride 200 metres of sand, and you don't want to be in a headspace where you think unless you drop your tyre pressures down, you're at a massive disadvantage, because that's just going to hurt you going into the sand. Straight away you're defeated. So
stay off the forums.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't know anything.
No, you know, there'd be plenty of forums that would say there's no way in hell you'd ride a GS through that unless you had 10 PSI in your rear tyre. You're kidding yourself. But we've proven that wrong. Yeah, exactly. But in saying that, the reason is, guys, you want to enjoy your riding and be able to change surfaces all day and not have to stress out about that. So 40 PSI is a bit high. We'd probably normally run about 36, 37, something like that. And that works great everywhere. That's what we run on safari. We go through all sorts of different terrain. When I just rode last week up to Alice Springs, we had 43 PSI in the rear tyre the whole ride, and we did heaps of sand through the back of Hattah, and then when we got up near Pink, like hundreds of kilometres of sandy surface, and we had 43 PSI in the whole time.
And on a tyre that's
less of an off-road tyre than what most of the bikes here have, and what this thing's got on it, and it was no problem. So the rider input and control input, like we say at our other courses, but especially in the sand, it outweighs tyre pressure and tyre selection a lot. So try not to get caught up in that. In saying that, if you're crossing the Simpson or you're going to be in proper sand for a long time and you know it, sure, drop it down.
A way of pumping them back up.
Yep. Yep, don't forget that.
Don't need to do a 200k of bitumen with
yeah, with a flat tyre basically. Yeah, just sure, you could drop it down. I wouldn't go as low as some people talk about, but maybe down to 20 PSI or something like that. It might help a little bit. Where that will help the most, guys, is when you go to get going again from a standstill, because the tyre will flatten out a bit more. Once you're moving, not a huge amount of difference, because the struggle comes from the fact you're in soft stuff and the bike's doing this, not from drive. So, you know, where that softer tyre pressure helps the most is when you're getting moving from a standstill, because the tyre spreads out and doesn't sink quite as easy. So
With a motorcycle, I think it comes from forward driving where they
Yeah.
go low and it spreads the
Well, they're a
actual
flat
surface area.
profile anyway,
Yeah,
aren't
they've
they?
got a motorcycle tyre that's got a round profile. It's not going to give you a bigger footprint
Tiny little
at
bit.
all, like tiny, like it's
Plus it closes up the tread on the tyre. So if this was a flat tyre and you get your thumbs and push in on it on the top, all the knobs that are spread out because of the curved profile, when you push it in and it flattens out, the knobs all close up and then all of a sudden you're almost on a slick. So, you know, it doesn't really make sense to do it, but you know, it can help a little bit, but like I said, mostly just for when you stop and start. Alright, any questions with that stuff? Who's been stuck in the sand and had a mega